There's something about volcanic caves that feels fundamentally wrong. The kind of wrong that makes your skin crawl even before you descend into their darkness. These aren't gentle limestone caverns shaped by water over millennia. These are violent wounds in the earth, carved by molten rock at temperatures exceeding 2000 degrees Fahrenheit. Places where life shouldn't exist, and yet sometimes something does. Something that defies every natural law we understand. Across the world, in lava tubes beneath dormant volcanoes, explorers have stumbled upon discoveries so disturbing that many refuse to return. Not because of geological hazards or toxic gases, but because of what they found waiting in the darkness. Objects, formations, and phenomena that shouldn't exist in environments this hostile, this isolated, this utterly inhospitable to anything living. Today, we're descending into 7 volcanic caves where explorers uncovered things that will haunt your thoughts for days. Mysteries buried in stone that science still cannot explain. The frozen sentinels of Kazumura Cave. Kazumura Cave in Hawaii is the longest and deepest lava tube in the world, stretching over 40 miles beneath the slopes of Kilauea volcano. In 1988, a team of speleologists led by Dr. David Bunnell descended into one of the deeper chambers, a section that had remained unexplored due to its difficult access through a series of narrow passages requiring advanced rope work. What they found in that chamber stopped them cold. Standing upright against the far wall were 3 human-shaped formations, each roughly 5 to 6 feet tall, covered entirely in a dark mineral crust that gave them the appearance of mummified figures frozen in place. At first, the team thought they were looking at lava stalagmites that coincidentally resembled human forms, but as they approached, the details became impossible to dismiss. The formations had distinct anatomical features. Shoulders, arms bent at the elbows, heads tilted at slight angles, as if turning to look at something. The mineral coating was so thick and uniform that it appeared deliberately applied, like plaster cast over underlying structures. When Dr. Bunnell carefully scraped away a small section of the coating on one figure's arm, the team was horrified to discover what appeared to be desiccated tissue underneath. Organic material that had somehow been preserved beneath the mineral layer. But how? Lava tubes don't create mummification conditions. The temperature, humidity, and airflow patterns in Kazumura should cause rapid decomposition of any organic matter, not preservation. Carbon dating of tiny samples taken from the formations returned results indicating the organic material was approximately 850 years old, predating recorded Hawaiian settlement in that region by several centuries. The mineral coating itself appeared to be primarily composed of iron oxides and volcanic glass, materials common in lava tubes, but the uniformity of coverage and the perfect preservation beneath it remained inexplicable. Local Hawaiian elders, when shown photographs of the formations, became visibly disturbed and refused to discuss them in detail, mentioning only that certain caves were kapu, forbidden, for reasons that had been lost to time but remained in cultural memory as warnings. The formations were documented, sampled, and then left in place due to concerns about damaging potentially significant archaeological remains. But when a follow-up expedition attempted to return to the chamber in 1992, they couldn't locate it. The cave system's passages had shifted slightly due to seismic activity from ongoing volcanic processes, and the specific combination of turns and drops that led to the chamber could no longer be replicated. The frozen sentinels, as the team came to call them, remained somewhere in the depths of Kazumura Cave, standing in their dark chamber, waiting in silence that has lasted centuries. To this day, no satisfactory explanation has emerged for how organic remains could be so perfectly preserved in a lava tube environment, or why they were positioned upright against the wall in postures that suggest they were placed there deliberately. Some researchers speculate they might be victims of an ancient disaster, perhaps overcome by volcanic gases and then rapidly coated by mineral-rich water during a period of unusual geological activity. But that theory doesn't explain the positioning, the completeness of the mineral coating, or the apparent deliberateness of their arrangement. Others whisper darker theories, suggestions that these weren't victims at all but something else, figures that entered the cave for reasons we can't understand and remain there, transformed by processes we haven't discovered. The Singing Chamber of Mount Rainier. In the summer of 2004, a team of volcanologists studying lava tube formations in Mount Rainier's Paradise ice caves noticed something strange while setting up seismic monitoring equipment in a chamber roughly 200 feet below the surface. At irregular intervals, usually in the early morning hours, they began hearing a sound they described as singing or chanting, a rhythmic tonal pattern that seemed to emanate from deeper within the cave system. At first, they assumed it was wind passing through narrow passages, creating harmonic resonance, a well-documented phenomenon in certain cave systems. But when they set up acoustic recording equipment and analyzed the sounds, the patterns didn't match any known natural acoustic phenomenon. The sounds occurred in distinct phrases, each lasting approximately 11 to 13 seconds, followed by periods of silence ranging from 3 to 7 minutes. The tonal structure wasn't random wind noise, but showed organizational patterns, rising and falling in pitch with what sounded almost like intentional variation. Dr. James Kincaid, the team's acoustic specialist, noted in his field report that the patterns exhibited characteristics similar to human vocalization, particularly in the frequency ranges and harmonic overtones. But the source direction couldn't be pinpointed despite using directional microphones and triangulation methods. Even more disturbing was what happened when they followed the sound deeper into the system. The cave passages led them to a chamber they hadn't mapped before, roughly 30 feet in diameter with walls that appeared unusually smooth, almost polished, despite being formed by volcanic activity that typically creates rough, jagged surfaces. In the center of the chamber was a depression in the floor, circular and approximately 6 feet across, filled with what looked like solidified lava, but with an unusual glassy surface that reflected their lights in strange ways. When they approached the depression, the singing stopped. Complete silence for the first time in hours. Then, as Dr. Kincaid leaned over to examine the glassy surface more closely, he reported feeling an intense wave of vertigo and nausea, strong enough that he had to be helped back to the entrance by his colleagues. 2 other team members reported similar symptoms when approaching the depression, along with a sensation they described as pressure against their chests and sudden difficulty breathing, despite oxygen monitors showing normal atmospheric levels. The team decided to seal the chamber and report their findings to the Park Service, but when rangers arrived 3 days later to investigate, the entrance to the chamber had collapsed, blocked by what appeared to be a recent rockfall. Attempts to re-excavate proved dangerous due to unstable sealing conditions, and the project was abandoned. The acoustic recordings, however, remain in the archives of the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network. When skeptical researchers have listened to them, trying to prove they're simply misinterpreted natural sounds, most have acknowledged that the patterns are unusual and difficult to explain through known geological acoustics. Some have noted that when the recordings are played back, sensitive individuals report feeling uneasy or experiencing mild headaches, effects that persist even when they don't know what they're listening to, suggesting something in the frequency patterns affects human neurology in ways we don't understand. To this day, the singing chamber remains inaccessible, buried somewhere beneath Mount Rainier's ice and rock. The sounds may still occur in that dark space, echoing through empty passages where no one can hear them anymore. Or perhaps they stopped when the entrance collapsed, as if whatever generated them knew it was no longer being observed. The Watchers of Thrinukajigur. In Iceland, the dormant volcano Thrinukajigur offers one of the world's only opportunities to descend directly into a magma chamber, a vast underground space where molten rock once pooled before draining away, leaving a cathedral-like cavity with walls stained in brilliant reds, yellows, and purples from mineral deposits. Tourism companies have operated descents into the chamber since 2012, but in the years before it became a commercial attraction. Researchers exploring the deeper tunnels branching off from the main chamber found something that made them question whether tourists should ever be allowed inside. In 2007, geologist Aron Christensen and his team were mapping a narrow passage that descended even deeper into the volcano's throat when they entered a small alcove approximately 800 feet below the main chamber. The walls of this alcove were different from the rest of the system. Instead of the typical rough basalt or smooth obsidian, these walls were covered in what appeared to be carved faces. Dozens of them, each roughly the size of a human head, all oriented toward the center of the space. The faces weren't stylized or symbolic like ancient petroglyphs. They were disturbingly realistic, with distinct features. Eyes, noses, mouths frozen in expressions that ranged from neutral to what Christensen described as abject terror. At first, the team thought they had discovered an ancient ritual site, perhaps predating known Icelandic settlement. But that theory collapsed when they realized the faces were carved directly into volcanic glass that had formed during the volcano's last eruption, roughly 4,000 years ago. The carving would have had to occur in molten or near molten rock, an impossibility that made no sense. When Christensen photographed the faces, something even stranger emerged. In the photographs, several of the faces appeared to have changed expression between shots taken minutes apart, subtle shifts in the shadows around the eyes and mouths that suggested movement. Christensen insists he did not manipulate the images, and digital forensic analysis found no evidence of alteration. The team's equipment also malfunctioned in the alcove. Compass needles spun erratically. GPS units failed to maintain satellite locks despite being in a chamber with a clear path to the surface, and one team member's digital watch reset itself to 0 o'clock and stopped working entirely. When they returned to the surface and reported their findings, Icelandic authorities sealed the passage and removed it from all public maps of the volcano. The official reason cited was structural instability and risk of toxic gas accumulation, but Christensen, who retired from geological work shortly after the expedition, suggested in a private interview years later that authorities were more concerned about the psychological impact the alcove might have on visitors. He mentioned that 2 members of his team, after seeing the faces, refused to ever enter a cave again, and both reported recurring nightmares featuring the expressions carved into the volcanic glass. The alcove remained sealed behind locked gates that tourists never see, hidden in the depths of Thrinukajigur, where the magma once flowed. Whether the faces are genuine ancient carvings created by some unknown technique, natural pareidolia enhanced by unusual lighting conditions, or something else entirely, no one can say with certainty because access is forbidden, and likely will remain so indefinitely. The ash shadows of Mount Vesuvius. When Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 CE, it buried the Roman cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum under meters of volcanic ash and pumice, preserving them in a catastrophic snapshot of ancient life. Archaeologists have spent centuries excavating these sites, uncovering buildings, artifacts, and the famous plaster casts of victims whose bodies decayed within the ash, leaving perfect molds of their final moments. But beneath Pompeii, in the network of lava tubes that riddle the volcanic rock, explorers have found something that the tourists above never see: shadows. In 1998, a team of Italian speleologists exploring a newly discovered lava tube beneath the ancient city's eastern edge found sections of tunnel wall that displayed human silhouettes, not carved or painted but somehow burned or imprinted directly into the rock itself. These weren't the expected ash-preserved remains from the 79 CE eruption, but something older and stranger. The silhouettes appeared in postures that suggested movement, walking, running, or in some cases, what looked like dancing or ritualistic gestures. Carbon dating of organic residues within the rock surrounding the shadows returned dates of approximately 800 to 1000 BCE, centuries before Rome even existed. During the Bronze Age, when the region was inhabited by people who left no written records. But the most disturbing aspect wasn't their age. It was the fact that the shadows appeared to have been created by intense localized heat, similar to the nuclear shadows left on buildings in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, where thermal radiation from the atomic blast burned human silhouettes onto surfaces before vaporizing the bodies. But what heat source in 800 BCE could generate temperatures intense enough to imprint human shadows onto volcanic rock. Lava flows from normal eruptions don't create such effects because they either consume everything in their path or flow too slowly for people to be caught in postures, suggesting rapid movement. The team's lead researcher, Dr. Claudia Romano, noted in her report that the rocks surrounding the shadows showed mineral alteration consistent with brief exposure to temperatures exceeding 3,000 degrees Celsius, far hotter than typical volcanic eruptions and localized precisely around the shadow areas, without affecting the rest of the tunnel walls. The Italian government classified the report and sealed the tunnel shortly after its discovery. The official explanation was that the site needed to be protected from looters, and that structural concerns made it dangerous for further exploration. But several team members reported being visited by officials who strongly encouraged them not to discuss their findings publicly. Dr. Romano left archaeology shortly after and now works in medical imaging, refusing to give interviews about the shadows. One team member who spoke anonymously years later said they weren't just disturbed by what they found but by what it implied. That something in the deep past, in those lava tubes beneath what would become Pompeii, had generated heat intense enough to vaporize human beings and leave only their shadows behind. To this day, the ash shadows remain sealed beneath Pompeii's streets, hidden in tunnels that guidebooks don't mention and maps don't show. Whether they represent some unknown ancient disaster, a volcanic event with characteristics we've never documented, or something else entirely, they remain one of Italy's most closely guarded archaeological secrets. The drumming stones of Olduino Lengai. Olduino Lengai in Tanzania is the world's only active volcano that erupts nitrocarbonatite lava, an unusual type of lava that flows at relatively low temperatures, around 500 to 600 degrees Celsius, and appears black at night, glowing only faintly red. The Maasai people consider the volcano sacred, calling it the Mountain of God, and traditional beliefs warn that certain caves on its slopes are inhabited by spirits that must never be disturbed. In 2011, a team of international geologists studying the volcano's unique lava composition entered one of these forbidden caves, a lava tube on the mountain's northern slope that local guides refused to approach. Inside, approximately 400 feet from the entrance, they discovered a chamber containing dozens of black stones, each roughly spherical and ranging from the size of a grapefruit to that of a basketball, arranged in a precise circular pattern around a central depression. The stones appeared to be composed of the volcano's characteristic nitrocarbonatite material, but they had been worked, shaped and polished to near perfect smoothness, their surfaces reflecting light with an almost metallic sheen. When team member Dr. Sarah Chen carefully lifted one of the stones, she discovered it was hollow, and when shaken gently, it produced a deep resonant tone, like a percussion instrument. Each stone produced a different pitch when struck or shaken, and the team realized they were looking at what appeared to be a massive stone xylophone or lithophone, an ancient musical instrument crafted from volcanic rock. But the mystery deepened when they attempted to date the stones. The nitrocarbonatite material is unstable and typically degrades within decades when exposed to atmospheric moisture. Yet these stones showed no signs of degradation, despite being in a humid cave environment. Moreover, the precision of the hollowing process and the consistency of the wall thickness required to produce specific tones suggested advanced understanding of acoustics and access to tools capable of working extremely hard stone with millimeter precision. When the team photographed the arrangement and attempted to document the exact positioning of each stone, something unexpected occurred. Dr. Chen's audio recorder, which had been running continuously to capture ambient cave sounds, picked up what sounded like faint drumming rhythms, but none of the team members were touching the stones at that moment. When they reviewed the recording later, the rhythm was clear and complex, following patterns that musicologists later identified as consistent with traditional African polyrhythmic structures, but performed with precision impossible for human drummers to maintain. The team spent only 2 hours in the chamber before local guides, who had been waiting nervously at the cave entrance, insisted they leave immediately, citing that the mountain was waking and they needed to descend. That night, all Lengai experienced a small eruption. Nothing unusual for an active volcano, but the guides interpreted it as the mountain's anger at the intrusion. When the team attempted to return the following week, they found the cave entrance had been deliberately collapsed, filled with rocks and debris in what appeared to be intentional blocking. Local authorities denied any knowledge of who sealed the cave but made it clear that further attempts to excavate would not be permitted. The recording of the phantom drumming has been analyzed by acoustic specialists and remains unexplained. The rhythms don't match any known natural acoustic phenomenon, and the complexity suggests intentional performance rather than random vibration. Some researchers speculate the stones might be positioned over underground streams or gas vents that cause them to vibrate at specific frequencies, creating music from natural processes. But that theory doesn't explain the precision of the tuning or the complex rhythmic patterns that emerged. The drumming stones remain sealed in their cave on the slopes of old Lengai, and perhaps that's where they should stay. The Maasai were right to call these caves forbidden. Some places hold memories in stone, and those memories, when awakened, play music that echoes from ages we were never meant to remember. The glass forest of Kilauea, in the summer of 2016. During one of Kilauea's active lava flows in Hawaii, a team of volcanologists using thermal imaging drones to track the flow's progress noticed an anomaly on their screens. A section of older lava tube approximately half a mile inland from the current flow that was displaying unusual heat signatures, as if something inside was still warm, decades after the last eruption that formed those tubes. When the team investigated on foot, they discovered an entrance that had been partially covered by new lava, but remained accessible through careful navigation. Inside, they found what they initially thought was a natural wonder, but quickly realized was something far stranger. The chamber, roughly 60 feet long and 30 feet wide, was filled with what appeared to be trees. Not fossilized trees or lava-covered remains, but structures made entirely of volcanic glass, obsidian, and other silica-based materials that had formed into shapes nearly identical to the native ohia trees that grow on Kilauea's slopes. Each tree stood 10 to 20 feet tall, with distinct trunks, branches, and even what looked like leaves, all crafted from translucent black glass that reflected the team's lights in fragmented rainbows. At first, they thought they were looking at lava tree molds, common formations that occur when lava flows around tree trunks, cooling and hardening before the wood burns away, leaving hollow shells. But these weren't molds. They were solid glass structures with internal complexity, branches that extended from trunks in anatomically correct patterns, and root systems that appeared to dig into the cave floor. The level of detail was extraordinary. You could see the texture of bark, the veins in leaves, even what looked like individual fibers in the wood grain, all rendered in glass. Dr. Peter Carlson, the team's lead volcanologist, noted in his field report that the glass trees showed no signs of having been molded or cast. They appeared to have formed spontaneously, as if the trees themselves had transformed directly into glass through some process that preserved their cellular structure at the molecular level. When samples were extracted for analysis, the results were even more puzzling. The glass contained organic carbon signatures consistent with plant tissue, but arranged in crystalline structures that shouldn't form in natural volcanic processes. The formation temperatures required to create such structures would have instantly vaporized any organic material. Yet here it was, somehow transmuted into glass while retaining biological patterns. Perhaps most disturbing was what the team found at the base of one of the larger glass trees. Embedded in the trunk, as if absorbed into the glass itself, was what appeared to be a human hand. Fingers splayed against the translucent surface, perfectly preserved down to the fingerprints and the fine hairs on the knuckles. The hand was also composed entirely of glass, indistinguishable from the tree except for its unmistakable anatomical form. Carbon dating of organic traces within the glass returned results suggesting formation approximately 600 to 800 years ago, but with large margins of error due to the unusual nature of the sample material. The team documented everything, took samples, and left the chamber, intending to return with more specialized equipment. But when they attempted to relocate the entrance 2 weeks later, the new lava flow from Kilauea's ongoing eruption had covered the area entirely, sealing the glass forest beneath meters of fresh basalt. The samples they extracted remain in storage at the Hawaiian Volcano Observatory, and the findings have been quietly shared among volcanological circles, but never published widely. The official stance is that the formations represent an unusual but natural interaction between lava flows and vegetation. But several team members have privately expressed doubt about that explanation. They've seen lava interact with trees thousands of times. What they found in that chamber was something else. Something that suggests processes we don't understand occurring in volcanic environments. Transformations that blur the line between mineral and organic. Between natural formation and something that feels almost deliberate. The glass trees remain sealed in their chamber beneath Kilauea's new lava, and unless future eruptions happen to re-expose them, they'll stay there indefinitely. And perhaps that's for the best. Some discoveries challenge not just our scientific understanding, but our fundamental sense of what's possible in the natural world. The glass forest was one of those discoveries. A place where the laws of chemistry and geology seemed to bend in ways that left even veteran volcanologists shaking their heads and quietly acknowledging that they'd seen something they couldn't explain. The whispering void of Mount Erebus. Mount Erebus in Antarctica is Earth's southernmost active volcano, a frozen peak that contains one of the world's few permanent lava lakes, a churning pool of molten rock that has burned continuously for at least 100 years, possibly much longer. In 1991, a team of researchers studying the volcano's unique lava composition descended into one of the ice caves that form around fumaroles, volcanic vents that emit steam and gases. These ice caves are temporary structures, constantly melting and reforming as volcanic activity fluctuates, and exploring them is dangerous due to collapse risks and toxic gas exposure. But this team, led by New Zealand volcanologist Dr. Mark Thompson, discovered something that made the physical dangers seem trivial. Deep within one of the larger ice caves, approximately 200 feet below the surface, they found a vertical shaft descending into darkness, its walls perfectly smooth and circular, as if drilled by machinery. The shaft was roughly 10 feet in diameter and angled steeply downward at about 60 degrees, disappearing beyond the reach of their lights. The team had encountered natural volcanic shafts before, but this one was different. The walls weren't rough basalt or jagged ice. They were smooth, almost polished, and warm to the touch despite being surrounded by glacial ice. When they shone lights down the shaft, they could see it extended at least several hundred feet, possibly much farther, and from somewhere deep within came a sound. Dr. Thompson described it as whispering, not wind moving through narrow passages, but something that carried the cadence and rhythm of human speech, though no words could be distinguished. The sound seemed to respond to their presence. When the team spoke or moved, the whispering would pause, then resume with what felt like increased intensity, as if whatever generated it was answering or perhaps warning them. One team member, Dr. Rachel Foster, recorded the sounds using a directional microphone pointed down the shaft. When they played back the recording at base camp, something unprecedented happened. Every person who listened to the recording, even those who hadn't been in the cave, reported experiencing the same vivid mental image. A vast underground space filled with angular structures, almost architectural in nature, and a sense of something waiting, watching, aware. The consistency of the reports was disturbing enough that Dr. Thompson decided not to pursue further exploration of the shaft and recommended it be sealed and restricted. When the recording was later analyzed by acoustic specialists and psychologists, they found embedded within the sound patterns were infrasonic frequencies, sound waves below the threshold of human hearing, but known to cause psychological effects including anxiety, disorientation, and hallucinations. However, the frequencies weren't random. They occurred in organized patterns, almost like pulses or signals, and when mapped visually, they formed geometric shapes that some researchers noted resembled architectural blueprints or circuit diagrams. The Antarctic research community quietly decided that the shaft and its surrounding ice cave posed too many risks for further investigation. The area was marked as restricted due to volcanic hazards, and when the ice cave collapsed during a storm later that year, no effort was made to re-excavate the shaft. The whispering, and whatever lies at its bottom, remain sealed beneath Erebus's frozen slopes. Dr. Thompson, now retired, has given only one interview about the experience, saying that sometimes in geology you encounter things that make you question whether the Earth's interior is as lifeless as we assume, or whether there are processes occurring in deep volcanic systems that we fundamentally don't understand, processes that might produce phenomena indistinguishable from intelligence. The recording was filed away in the archives of the Antarctic Research Program, classified not as secret but as unsuitable for general distribution due to psychological effects, a category that didn't exist before the Mount Erebus expedition, but has been applied to several similar discoveries since. These 7 volcanic caves, scattered across the world from Hawaii to Antarctica, Iceland to Tanzania, represent something more disturbing than individual mysteries. They suggest a pattern, a recurring theme of discoveries in volcanic environments that shouldn't be possible but undeniably are. Preserved bodies in conditions that should cause decomposition. Sounds that mimic intelligence emerging from empty stone chambers. Faces carved in rock that couldn't have been worked when it formed. Shadows burned into stone by heat sources that shouldn't exist. Musical instruments that play themselves. Trees transformed into glass while retaining organic structure, and shafts descending into Earth's interior that whisper with voices we can almost understand. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect isn't the individual discoveries, but what they collectively imply. That volcanic caves, those violent scars where Earth's molten interior meets the surface, aren't empty lifeless tunnels but environments where the normal rules break down, where phenomena occur that we can't explain and perhaps aren't meant to. The explorers who descend into these spaces often return changed, speaking less of what they found and more of what they felt, a presence, an awareness, a sense that in those dark chambers beneath active volcanoes, something exists that doesn't fit into our neat categories of living and non-living, natural and artificial, past and present. These caves remain, most of them sealed now, holding their secrets in darkness, lit only by the dim glow of distant magma. And maybe that's where those secrets should stay, because every time we venture deeper, every time we push further into those volcanic depths, we find things that challenge not just our scientific understanding, but our fundamental assumptions about what Earth's interior contains, and what might be waiting in the stone and fire that formed our world. If these stories have left you unsettled, if you find yourself wondering what else might be hidden in the world's volcanic caves, subscribe to explore more mysteries that exist in the places we're warned never to enter. Let us know in the comments which discovery disturbed you most, and what other forbidden locations you think we should investigate. Because sometimes the most terrifying mysteries aren't found in space or the ocean depths, they're found in the hollow places beneath our feet, where the rock is warm and the darkness whispers secrets that were never meant to reach the surface.